And it is the Saturday Coffee Klatch with Heather Lofthouse and yours truly, Robert Reich. Heather, it is very nice to see you in person.
You in person, pinch me.
Well,
I'm in
not
front
going
of
to pinch you.
That would hurt.
That would hurt. It's very
Can't
rude.
believe it.
It's very rude to pinch. But anyway, so what are we going to talk about today?
Let's talk about Trump's tariff chaos.
You know,
Wait, there's more.
Oh.
The trade war with China, and then the reverse Robin Hood switcheroo that's happening right under our very noses.
You know, there's a meltdown going on. At first, it was all Elon Musk, and it was a meltdown of the federal government. Now it's a meltdown of the economy, not just the United States economy, but to some extent the world economy. And Donald Trump is right in the middle. It's hard to remember that 10, 11 weeks ago, actually the economy was pretty good.
I know.
Everything was pretty good.
Okay, tariffs. What has happened? Walk us through or all of it or where we are now. You pick.
Donald Trump decided, as we all know, that he had to do something different. That even though he kept on saying over and over again that tariffs were beautiful and necessary, and they would generate huge amounts of money for the American economy,
and trust him,
and trust it was great. He finally met his match, and the match was not just the stock market. It was also the bond market.
Yes, tell us more.
Well, well, I mean, it is interesting. It's very important. The bond market, we don't talk about very much, but the bond market, we're talking about treasury bonds. They are the safe harbor. If you want to put your money into the safest place it is, you don't put it under the mattress. You don't put it into gold. You put it into treasury bonds. And that's sort of... Everybody knows that's where safe. I mean, it's in the entire world, Heather. It's not just the Americans. You put it into T-bills. But what happened was T-bills started to show that investors in T-bills, those people who were actually buying T-bills, wanted even more interest to respond to a risk that they were feeling, a risk that maybe they wouldn't be paid back. Maybe the United States was going down the tubes. Maybe the entire global economy was going down the tubes. Maybe the dollar was not really reliable anymore.
That is a fundamental uncertainty.
This is
deep.
Deep.
They were right.
This is deep. And we're talking about not just a couple of investors. We're talking about, again, global investors in T-bills, in the treasury bills. And if they don't have confidence, then the whole foundation of the economy, the world economy, starts crumbling. And why did they not have confidence? They didn't have confidence because they were worried about these extraordinary tariffs on everybody that made no sense to anyone. And Trump really did have to do a major U-turn. He said, okay, I'm going to hold off for the next 90 days. We're not going to put the tariffs into effect, and I'm going to consider this all about negotiation. These are not, I'm going to change my story. My story was, we're going to have these tariffs come hell or high water, but my story now is they are just provisional, and everybody can negotiate with me, the king.
Right. Okay, I have so many questions. So, first of all, some people said he did a reverse, but it's not really a reverse. Look at China.
Yes.
We are still in a huge trade war with them. So we said to them, look at our tariffs, nanny, nanny, boo-boo, 145%.
Did you say nanny, nanny, boo-boo?
Yeah. I mean, it's a chicken.
Trump basically said nanny, nanny,
Yeah.
boo-boo,
And
but
they
not
have
in those
come back.
words. But you don't do that with China. I mean, we are now in a trade war. We put up our tariffs against Chinese goods, and they put up their tariffs against American goods, and it's now basically the beginning of the decoupling of the two of the biggest economies in the world. We're the number one economy. China, in terms of trade, is the number 2 or 3 economy, and you try to decouple those two economies, and you are really in no man's land. I mean, we've never been here before. And so you are absolutely right. Trump retreated on all the rest of his tariffs. It's still 10%.
Exactly. Still 10%.
I mean, that's still 10%. That's not nothing. That is still an impediment, big impediment.
Right.
But now we also are trying to decouple from China, which I think is if I were the CEO of a major company, I would not know what to do. I mean, where do I invest? How do I invest? Do I build more capacity in the United
Right.
States? Do I build more capacity in Mexico? Do I hire more people? Do I fire people? If I'm a CEO, I would not know. It's
Right.
just wild uncertainty.
Yeah, and watching this volatility, and a number of CEOs have said this. I mean, there was a quote from MetLife and other people who are saying we can't be at the whim of one individual person. They didn't put in there madman, but this is a problem for business and planning and strategy. But can you tell me more about the bond market? So why does that matter to the everyday person? How will they see the effects of the bond market in the insecurity? Where will it hit them?
Well, it will hit them because remember, long-term bond prices, the interest rates are going up. So in terms of mortgages, in terms of car loans, in terms of any loans, it's going to affect all of the loans. It's going to make all lending more expensive. But underlying all of this uncertainty, and I want to emphasize this, uncertainty is the enemy of investment. Uncertainty means that an economy that is cloaked in uncertainty really starts grinding to a halt. So you have the average American family is going to be paying $4,700 a year more because of the tariffs that are now already
Yeah,
there.
that's the latest estimate we saw.
But beyond that, you have inflation, but at the same time you have a slowdown because CEOs don't know what to do, investors don't know what to do, and they are not going to do it because if you don't know what to do, you're not going to do it. And that means that the economy slows down. Inflation and recession starting in both. And that is called stagflation. We haven't
don't
seen
want
that.
it.
We don't want it. We haven't seen that since the 1970s. And I don't mean to be flip about this. This is
No.
a serious, it's harming huge amounts of numbers of people. But the thing is that this is all brought on by Donald Trump. Donald Trump and his regime. His economic advisors are at odds. They don't know. They are yelling at each other. They're insulting each other. They are trying to come up with ways of persuading the Mad King to do what they want to do, and they are all in the midst of this chaos, and it is chaos.
And we not only are we evil and all of that seen as that, but we are fools. I mean, if you pull out the plug from a bathtub and then you're surprised when the water's going down, I don't understand what did he think?
That's very good. Can I use that
Feel
analogy?
free with your Substack.
Yeah.
But so here we have. Here, I'm going to do the tariff. I'm not going to do that. Look at me. Be cool. Don't be cool. People are getting nervous. So people called him up and he started watching the bond market. I mean, how do you think the shift got into his brain?
I think that the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, he went to Trump and he said, and this was planned. I mean, a lot of people planned this.
That's my next question.
And he said, look, Mr. President, sir, and you have to be very obsequious. You've got to be very, very careful. Mr. President, sir, if you continue on with these tariffs right now, we could see a major global meltdown with the United States pulled down dramatically. Maybe, Mr. President, sir, maybe what you want to do is postpone a little bit because then you can have the opportunity to negotiate with all of these countries and you can get some great deals, sir, Mr. President, and you can still stick to your tariffs. But this is a matter of just negotiating. You are the best negotiator in the world, Mr. President, sir. This is the art of the deal. You know this better than anybody, Mr. President, sir.
But that's kind of an open-faced sandwich. I bet he started with the compliment sandwich, the full compliment. I thought this has been an incredible.
That's right. You have to start.
This is incredible,
You have
but
to
also
start
could be
with
even better if you
You are
fixed it.
wonderful. You are just fabulous, Mr. President, sir.
I saw that on your Substack when you were doing a script.
It is sad, but it's also frightening. And I want to come back to this theme, Heather, which is that 10 and a half weeks ago, the United States economy was actually in pretty good shape. Our foreign policy was in pretty good shape. Domestic policy was in fairly good shape. I mean, there are obviously room for improvement. And a lot of consumers and a lot of voters, particularly voters, were a little bit worried about inflation and high prices. Donald Trump had convinced them before the election that he would bring prices down, that he would fix the economy, that he was the businessman, and he understood. He was a successful businessman, that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris didn't understand what they were doing. Look where we are now.
But why aren't more people shouting? Voters, the press, why aren't more people saying, you are screwing us over? This is not what you promised. So many are, let's give him a little more time.
Well,
I mean, is that just because they're supplicants, or is that because they don't want egg on their face, which is expensive these days?
I think the people who the press pays attention to are CEOs or, in slightly different contexts, the heads of universities or others. But everybody right now is scared. They don't want Donald Trump to be angry with them. So there is kind of this chilling effect. You're not going to hear people, except the Democrats, yes, but the Democrats don't have any power right now. A week ago, on April 5th, you had huge numbers. You had millions of people demonstrating against the Trump administration, but the demonstrations didn't get much coverage because the press and a lot of people on the inside in Washington say it doesn't matter. We don't have an election coming up until 2026. That's the problem. The meltdown is occurring now. The craziness, the incompetence. I mean, look at just last week was the signal gate. Mm-hmm. I mean, we think that was months ago. It was just last week, signal gate. Now this week is kind of tariff gate and China gate. These are real scandals in terms of running America. Yeah. And it's clear that Trump doesn't know what he is doing.
So you have said, and other people have said, the stock market is not the economy when it is doing incredibly well and everyone says, look at the economy, it's so great, everything's going, and that's not the economy. And we have to think about things like the minimum wage and other things that actually affect the average person. But now that's being turned against us and they're saying, well, the stock market's not the economy's doing just fine. I mean, it's interesting, the same frameworks.
Well, here's the way, the truth.
Yeah.
The stock market is
that.
not the economy. Most about 94% of the stock market is owned by the richest 10% of Americans. So obviously it's not the economy, but it starts affecting the economy because the richest 10% of Americans, their purchases account for about half of all the spending on purchases in the American economy. And if they feel like they are poorer because their stock portfolios have dropped, they are not going to make the kinds of purchases they were making before. They're going to pull in a little bit, and even a little bit means we're heading toward recession. It means fewer jobs. It means less industrial capacity. It means a kind of not a depression, but a slowdown.
What does it mean for borrowing and the deficit too, right?
Yes. Because the deficit is still hanging like a sword of Damocles over the heads of everybody who has any responsibility in the economy at all. The Trump administration wants to pass a big tax cut for, just like the 2018 tax cut that went into effect in 2018, mainly the rich, mainly big corporations. They are the main beneficiaries. But to do that without busting the budget, you've got to create some cuts. And Elon Musk's cuts in the federal workforce are really tiny. I mean, they're
paper
not,
cuts.
They're little tiny paper cuts. They're not. I mean, yes, a lot of people are hurt very badly, and a lot of people are scared.
Oh, it's horrific.
And if you're trying to get Social Security, you know nobody's answering the phones and nobody
where
is
do you get
responding.
$1.5 trillion?
Well, that's the interesting thing, because the House passed a budget which it had to do in order to fast track, called reconciliation, fast track this tax cut through the Senate. But the House said we are going to cut $1.5 trillion there's no way of doing that without affecting or cutting in some way Medicaid and or Medicare and or Social Security. So suddenly, and I think over the next month or two, people are going to be aware of this. A lot of people are going to, who average working Americans, I'm not talking about the top 10%, I'm talking about people who just are trying to get by. 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, Heather. And if suddenly your Medicaid or your Social Security or your Medicare or your parents' Medicare or their Social Security is not available, and you're starting to pay higher and higher rates for loans and for mortgages, and everything is starting to cost more because of tariffs, even the 10% tariffs. I mean, you are getting squeezed. You, as an individual American, are getting squeezed tighter and tighter.
And the money's being redistributed upward.
Well, it is if that tax cut goes through, and that's what the Republicans are absolutely dedicated to doing, because most of the billionaire money that they got during the election, the 2024 election, was premised on the promise of a big tax cut. Well, this is reverse Robin Hood. This is, if you look at the large picture economically, this is taking from average working people and the poor and sending it in the form of a big tax cut to people at the very top.
But how can they touch the third rail, that we don't touch, which is Medicaid, and also under
Social Security.
And Social Security, under the guise of eliminating fraud, right? I mean, we hear this constantly when you see the real numbers of fraud are so tiny, and it is a guise. I mean, this is not what's happening.
This is what Elon Musk's role was, basically.
He was not in the news much this past week. That was
notice?
refreshing.
Well, we'll get back to that.
Okay.
But Elon Musk's role over the past month and a half, 2 months, has been to create the impression that some of these big programs are filled with fraud, so that the public is not as outraged when the Republicans start to cut.
And he is a genius and the only one who can find it, and he is transparent with it, and all of that is a ruse.
Well, it's all a ruse. And a ruse is a nice way of putting it. It's a giant lie. But the Republicans will use this lie, and they will continue to use the lie. This was understood in the 1930s, the big lie. If you just say the same thing over and over, it's like the Trump in the 2020 election. If you say the same thing over and over, people will eventually start to believe it. And the Democrats still don't have their act together. They can't decide exactly what their critique is going to be. And as a result,
their comeback plan.
And that's right. And as a result, you have just these big lies out there. The big lie that the tariffs are great. The big lie that you can make a giant tax cut that's going to help everybody. The big lie that it's that you can create space in the budget by just making these cuts. You can do a $1.5 trillion without affecting Medicaid and Social Security and Medicare. I mean, these are all lies.
But aren't people, people are not going to be happy about this. I'm ready for a few Republicans to say, my constituents really do actually need their Medicaid, and it's because some of them do have jobs, actually, and some of them are disabled, and they need their Medicaid.
Well, interestingly, we are now, starting this weekend, in a recess, and Republicans are going home.
Oh, they need a break.
And they're going home to town halls. I mean, they have been instructed not to have town halls because the town halls have become so antagonistic. People showing up and saying, why are you letting Musk do this? Why are you creating this havoc in the economy? But some of them are doing it anyway. And if they're not doing it, Democrats from other districts in the same state are coming in and substituting for the Republicans in the Republican town halls. So we're going to see a lot of pushback. But remember, nothing fundamentally will change or can change until you get a change in the control of Congress.
Right.
And you're not going to get that until the 2026 elections, in fact, until January of 2027. This is why Trump is moving as fast as he can. This is why there's such absolute craziness going on in the White House. I mean, he's also crazy. He's
Yeah.
a mad king.
Yeah.
But they want to just do as much as they can and get it over with as fast as they can.
So I want to talk more about the Mad King and how this is playing out and what we can do. But before that, you've used the term, and other people too, the financialization of America. We haven't seen the things that are happening now in this particular format, of course, one individual person making all these choices, but in how long these trends we're watching and the financialization of America. Tell us more about that, what that means.
Well, essentially, if you look at the American economy 50 years ago, a much bigger part of the economy was making stuff and providing services, not financial services, real services. Now,
Products.
Now it is a big part of the economy is finance, Wall Street. And you look at the news, and the news is filled with finance. I mean, Wall Street started calling the shots, became the biggest player and the most powerful player in the U.S. economy about 30 years ago. And they kept on growing. Wall Street was deregulated by Republicans and Democrats. And then we had, remember in 2008, the financial crisis. Wall Street was bailed out. The biggest banks were bailed out. Homeowners were not bailed out. The CEOs were basically rewarded for their gambling addiction. And Americans remember this. There's still a great deal of anger toward the financial community and toward the big banks and toward Wall Street. And indeed, the movements that we saw coming out of that, the Tea Party movement and the Occupy movement, right out of the 2008 financial crisis, basically were anti-establishment movements. And out of the anti-establishment movements, who came? Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. They were the heroes of the anti-establishment movement.
And here we are today.
And here we are today.
I do make you repeat yourself, but it's so helpful. And I think so many people need to be reminded of the actual story and the arc. If you follow it, what if A, then B, then C, right?
Well, the irony is that we find ourselves now with what could be a financial meltdown. And Donald Trump was not the tribune of the average person. He was not the anti-establishment candidate. He was the establishment candidate. He conjured up this big tax cut for the very wealthy, and he's going to do it again. He made the Republican Party into a Republican Party that was of the billionaire class, not just the millionaire class, the billionaire class. Now, the Democrats are not that much better because they turned their back on the working class of America. But right now, both parties, I think, and obviously the Republicans are much more at fault, have created the chaos we're now in. And I mean, the Republicans in Congress, show me a Republican in Congress who has integrity enough to stand up to Trump. They're very few.
I'll show you
Yeah, there are very few. There are a few in the Senate who are actually trying to get tariff authority back to Congress. That's where it is.
a few more with more time and more hurt will start to
Yes, I do.
poke through?
I think that the public pain, once it's clear that people are paying $4,700 more the typical family this year because of the tariffs, I think that there will be pressure on the Republicans in the Senate to take tariff authority back from
And it's going to
the
hit
president.
in so many different ways. I was watching about Christmas trees on CNN in April and how much of Christmas product comes from China and how that will hurt people.
Christmas trees
Yeah.
from China?
Well, the decorations of the trees.
Oh, the
and then
decorations,
all
yes, yes,
and
yes.
then all of the
and
stuff.
and from Canada. I mean, think of the
Exactly.
trees and
Yep.
all of the. I mean, the cost of building a house right now, or building any.
Well, that's
any,
what we're going to have
anything.
so many stories of how it's hitting people. And that's where the press comes in. By the way, AP reinstated. You mentioned that in Substack.
Yes, and the supply problems, what we call the supply chains, are now broken in so many ways. We thought they were broken after COVID. We thought, okay, we'll put them together. It was the corporations in the United States, global corporations, were furiously trying to put these supply chains back together. But now that we have a decoupling of the United States from the Chinese economy, We have a tariff now, 145%
Yep.
on China. Their tariff on us is what, 125%?
That's it.
I mean, you're basically saying no more trade. Well, that's nice to say, but what happens to all of the things that we were relying on China for our assembly or for components or for pieces of this and that? We also have big tariffs on Vietnam, on every place else.
That's it.
Even the 10% tariff intrudes on all of this. And
Like you say, logistics. I mean, you don't change overnight these huge
you can't.
systems.
You can't. And if you are scared because you don't know the future, because you think that there's somebody running the economy who doesn't really understand anything and changes his mind every 3 minutes, you as an investor or a CEO, you are not going to make a major commitment.
So he's a mad king, but also we can't underestimate how unpopular he is. I mean, it is wickedly dumb.
Wickedly dumb.
Wickedly dumb.
Wickedly
what he has
dumb.
been doing. And there is consumer sentiment is low, low, low.
Consumer
His
sentiment,
popularity-
actually, consumer sentiment is right out now at the lowest in the history of the polls that measure consumer sentiments, starting in 1952. I mean,
When you were a wee tot.
I remember I was 6 years old, and
How
they
was
asked
your
me about my
sentiment? Yeah,
consumer
it was
sentiment, and I
high.
said, "Well, I'm feeling pretty
Yeah,
good,
pretty good.
as a consumer." But I only consumed, breakfast cereal. I mean,
Right.
that wasn't much.
Well, and a toy probably. Here
A
and
toy. We want to cook 2 toys.
there. American made, probably.
And they were
Yeah.
American made. But I don't want to alarm you, and I certainly
late.
I certainly don't want to alarm you. But we are in deep shite.
It's so bad. And all these supplicants, you keep using this word supplicants in your Substack, but to watch these people groveling, I mean, this is part of his MO, right? So there are bigger pictures of how can he get his tax cuts pushed through and how can he get richer and keep his buddies richer, and all of that has to do with him maintaining his power. But watching these supplicants, I mean, it doesn't feel American. It feels like I'm watching a TV show about a past monarchy in a different
Yes,
world.
it does feel that way. And Trump right now, he is entertaining supplicants, people who are going to come in bowing and scraping, not only in his staff, but they're coming from all over the world. They're coming from Thailand and Vietnam and from Europe
And Hungary.
And Hungary.
Yeah.
And they're saying, please, Mr. President, please don't put this huge tariff on us. What would you like us to do? And university presidents are doing the same thing. Please, Mr. President, whatever you want
Wall
us to
Street.
do. And Wall Street is saying, and also the legal firms, please, Mr. President, whatever you want, just tell us what you want. We have never had before a kind of a mad king president who entertains a court and has a court in which so many supplicants are coming and bowing and scraping and asking whatever you want, Mr. President, sir. This is disgusting.
It's disgusting, and we have to start calling him out now. We cannot stop. It feels like people on purpose are worried. I mean, this is what he's trying to do, right? Chill everyone and do forced obeying. What's the phrase? I just forgot it. Obeying in advance.
Obeying in advance. I mean,
So what do we do? How do we counter this?
the only way of countering it is to stop. Just say to these countries, you've got to get together. The European Union and Canada and Mexico and Japan, you get together. You create your own free trade zone. Don't depend on Trump. Don't depend on the United States. You create a free trade zone. You university presidents, get together and don't allow Donald Trump to basically pick you apart and use the American Association of University Presidents and all of the free speech kind of lawsuits that you possibly can. If your law firms get together, I mean, there is some progress in law firms. Get together and sue the President of the United States and sue this administration for violating the most fundamental rights of universities and law firms in terms of their free speech.
Right.
The most important thing is not to give in. The most important thing is for people to have courage and backbone right now.
So what can individual people do? You were, last Saturday, hands off. So many people showed up. We haven't met since then. Yeah, no, we haven't clutched since then.
No, we haven't.
Time warped.
Is warped. Well, that's another thing that a mad king can do is play with your brain.
Yeah.
I think that individuals are not powerless on their own. When they come together in a demonstration like last week, yes, that's really important. When they say to their own institutions, universities or law firms or places of business, you must not give in to this extortion. That can be powerful. If young associates in a law firm say, no, we are going to leave, we are actually going to resign en masse if you give in to this mad king.
And what about the press and journalists?
Well, journalists also need to stop groveling. The Associated Press, for example, to take one good example, the Associated Press did not grovel. It sued the administration because the administration had this. It would not allow the Associated Press into news conferences. Why? Because the Associated Press refused for a while to use to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. And it's so petty. It's so petty. All of it is so petty. But it is a way. These are ways of fighting back. And kudos to universities and media and others who are fighting back, and shame on Elon Musk and the CEOs of America who are basically groveling and giving him whatever he wants.
He's putting the bully into bully pulpit. I feel like he is such. We've said this, but the bully in chief. We other people too. It's what do you know? Bully pulpit.
Bully pulpit comes from Teddy Roosevelt, who was, he thought about the bully pulpit as the
positive.
As positive. This was, being president, you had a pulpit, and the adjective bully in those days was bully.
Positive.
Great.
Yeah,
bully.
Terrific.
Yeah.
I know. Times have changed. And that was how long ago? In terms of a couple things we haven't covered, the Supreme Court, some good news-ish that came out of the Supreme Court was that Trump's administration has to bring back the Maryland man who was deported, or should we say kidnapped? Might be a better term.
Well,
what's the significance of that?
Well, it's important because the administration had admitted error with regard to its deportation of this particular person. And if the administration admits that he was erroneously sent to a terrible kind of torture prison in El Salvador, doesn't the administration have some responsibility to get him back? There's a larger issue here, too, Heather, and that is, and it's has to be decided by the Supreme Court soon, and that is, does a president have the right to decide to arrest and deport anybody, to another country and a terrible prison, or even a prison in another country? Without any due process, without any trial, what's to say? Who is to say that some of these people who have already been deported to El Salvador are not critics of the administration? Maybe they're American citizens.
Right.
We don't know.
But where is the judiciary? Isn't this judiciary?
There should be some sort of due process. And when we talk about due process, we mean a trial or the opportunity for a neutral judge to determine that the facts that the administration is using are correct. Otherwise, the administration can point at anybody and say, no, they are dangerous, or they are dangerous, or we don't like them. We're sending them to a prison in El Salvador.
I know it. Speaking of disappearing, so Musk felt a little like he was waning this past week. I didn't see him as much. Let's be clear. He's still doing evil through Doge. I think the FDIC was his target this week.
People are most angry about Social Security, not surprisingly. The lines, he caused the Social Security Administration to fire large portion of the people who were available to provide services to people who needed services, telephone or lining up or just changing their Social Security numbers or whatever. And when you have people who cannot get through to Social Security
via phone
or any other way, because a lot of people lined up and they could at the local Social Security office and they couldn't get through. You are hitting not just the third rail of American politics. You are really electrifying the entire electorate, and this is, I think, the end of Elon Musk. I know I've said that. I've said it before, but I think that
I like hearing it in person.
Well, but when you have Republicans going back to their districts, as they are now, and you have so many people saying to them, I can't even get through to Social Security anymore. You've got to change this.
Right. And they're older and they're far away from the office and they have to get there.
They're older and they are very politically active. That's one thing about older people. I have standing to say this. Politically active. These Republicans who are now hearing this, I think this is going to be the end of Elon Musk. Plus, he got into this shouting match or figurative shouting match with the trade advisor, Peter Navarro.
Around the tariffs.
And you don't do that publicly. If you're in an administration, you do it quietly. You don't do it.
Decorum. It's not something we're really.
Yes, I know. But it's even in the Trump administration, you don't do that publicly.
It's all, Bob, it's so cruel to watch it all. So we have Social Security being attacked. We have the economy. We have our health care system, right? It's Medicaid, and it's watching RFK Jr. come in and talk about all he's talking about and building for being able to pull vaccines is what it feels like he's doing.
Heather, the issue of cruelty is a major theme, and it's not just domestically. Look what Trump is doing with Netanyahu, allowing, after the ceasefire is over, basically a return to the bloodbath in Gaza, not even allowing aid to come into Gaza. Look what's happening in Ukraine. Just basically taking away American support for Ukraine and saying, in effect, to Vladimir Putin, do whatever you want. Look what's happening in Yemen. Around the world, the United States is pulling our aid out. We used to have USAID. That was it was humanitarian. It was in our interest to stop the spread of global health problems.
Disease, I know. And help with HIV/AIDS treatment and help provide contraception to those who need it.
Your point about cruelty is a major theme, and historians, when they write about the Trump administration, the word cruelty will be one of the major words they use.
It's also bullying 101, isn't it? To try and break down people emotionally, psychologically, physically. There's a cruelty that is.
I think you're onto a very important theme. This is anybody who has had a parent who is a bullying or abusive parent knows instinctively that cruelty, bullying, and also the lack of the ability to understand why they're doing something, their irrationality, the kind of coming out of left field suddenly.
Illogical, right.
These are all aspects of abuse. And I'm not a psychologist. I can't say that Donald Trump was abused as a kid, although there is evidence that he was. But a lot of the people around him are also abusive. They have histories of being abusive. They have histories of cruelty toward other people and toward themselves when they were kids.
So I'm going to bring up the fact that you have a new book coming out I know. Here we go. But you talk about bullying so honestly in it and your experience with bullying, but not more importantly, but I think some of the themes you cover in this book have been so important for inequality media civic action. They are themes that we have tried to follow too. They're looking at the corruption of money in politics, right? And we can look at this. Inequality breeds corruption, which breeds cynicism, which breeds demagogues, and we follow this train. And it's so interesting. I got a sneak peek at the book. Thank you. To watch how you have watched it happen, right? So it's called Coming Up Short, a memoir of my America. And you talk through your experience as a labor secretary, as a person in the world, as a baby boomer, right? And you talk about, look at what I have seen happen. Look at what the larger trends and the larger arc has been and why I think we've got to where we are.
I think that Donald Trump is not the fundamental cause of where we are. He is the consequence of 50 years in which the nation has not done what it should do or should have done. And maybe, I hope, I'm looking at the next generation and saying, my students, they are the ones that are going to have to repair what needs to be repaired, because it's going to take a generation, Heather. We've had 50 years of widening inequality, 50 years of greater and greater corruption in terms of money corrupting our democracy and our political system, big money from the rich and from corporations, 50 years in which a lot of things that should have been done in terms of, even global warming, climate change should have been instituted. Let me put it this way. My generation was the beneficiary of the greatest so-called generation. My father and my mother and all the others who made extraordinary sacrifices in the Second World War to bequeath to us a nation that had generated the largest middle class in history, and peace and prosperity. And it wasn't perfect. The plight of black people and women and equal opportunity still became a focus of our attention. And I was, I demonstrated in terms of the civil rights movement, and I demonstrated against the Vietnam War. But we at least were trying to create a better world. And I think the problem is that we never got near where we should have got. And so the working class was ignored, inequality widened. The problems of corruption and a country that was not the beacon that it should have been of democracy became apparent. Am I making you want to read this?
Well, I already did, so it's too late now. But but your last, not to do a spoiler alert, but you talk so much about your students and your faith and hope for the next generation. So that and what you've tried to bring them in the classroom, and you have a range of students, but I think of the students in your classroom, over 40,000 of them. And what?
Not one classroom, over the
over
years.
A number of classrooms. That's
Yes.
a big classroom. That's like Madison Square Garden is your classroom. But I do think that you've encouraged students to ask the important questions, to protect dissenting voices, to look at the big picture. And so the fact that you have faith in them makes it an okay read. An interesting read. It's not. I wouldn't say it's depressing. I think it's informative, and then there's hope in it.
Well, my fundamental hope, and the only silver lining I see on this Trumpian cloud and storm, is that it brings us back to first principles. What is the purpose of our democracy, of the United States in the world? Why, as citizens, what do we owe each other as members of the same society? What is this experiment that we're trying to undertake for the last 250 years? Why are we now off track, and how do we get back on track? These are fundamentals, and I think that in an ironic way, Donald Trump is forcing us back to the fundamentals.
It's true. And the common good. I mean, if you take away the common good, you realize you want it back.
You realize that without the common good, without a sense of what the common good is, and without a moral determination to achieve or try to achieve a common good, all you have is a bunch of selfish, crazy, isolated individuals running around trying to make themselves as powerful and as wealthy as possible.
Right.
And that's not a society.
Well, okay. Things I'm going to take from today, among others. Fighting back works. We have to do it immediately. By the way, Bernie and AOC in Los Angeles today on their oligarchy tour. So I think we have to keep up the fight. And I think better understanding what's happening is only helpful, even though it's depressing.
I think, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. And Heather, I want to say how lovely it is to be back in person.
Ditto.
And I want to also thank all of you. It's awfully good to see you and have you here with us in person. I want to thank Jordan Alport, who is our technical person behind the scenes who's done an extraordinary job. Michael Lahanis Calderon, who is also absolutely wonderful, and we couldn't live without him for a moment.
True.
And Naomi Bradford, many other people as well. But I want to thank you especially because it's your commitment, it's your determination, it's your values that really will pull us through this very, very dark time. Thank you.